Oh, 100%. Last year, the deer I was chasing, he done that to me quite a few. And it's very easy to get frustrated and give up, or shoot something else because it's easy, or but you got to stay focused. You got to. You got to push yourself through those times, because almost every single time that's happened to me, I sit down and I read these journals and I go through stuff. I look at trail cam pictures, and it's like a light bulb goes off, and it's like I know where he's at. I'm not right every time, but it's helped me out a bunch of times.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 285. Cameran Derefield. Last minute velvet bucks and thermals. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from -33 Merino Wool Layering System. Timeless natural insulation, keeping you warm on the coldest days while staying breathable and wicking away moisture on the wet ones. Grizzly Ears, the most advanced engineered wireless earbuds for the outdoors. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting BigBuckRegistryMerch.com. That's BigBuckRegistry, MERCH.com. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hi, this is Ben Rising with Whitetail Edge. Sit tight, as you're about to listen to the best podcast you possibly can listen to, the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Cameron Coble, the average Joe blue-collar bow hunter, and you're listening to my number one favorite podcast of all time, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Dan Infold from HuntingBeast.com. You're about to listen to one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. It's a game of chess, according to Cameran Derefield. There's a king and a pawn. Which is which? Well, that's to be determined at the end of the deer season. Studying annual journals about buck behavior and with heavy game camera monitoring, Cameran believes he can see a target buck's next move and plan accordingly. It's not instant success, but it is methodical and persistent, and generally speaking, Cameran is the one calling checkmate. Cameran shares with us all his deer hunting techniques, styles, and strategies. We'll get to our entire interview with Cameran Derefield in just one moment, but before we do, let's hear from our friends at -33 Merino Wool Products and Jim Keller with the Deer News. Let's talk about a hunter's layering system for a sec. We need to be ready for any weather that Mother Nature throws at us. With the layering concepts that -33 has created with their incredible merino wool products, they've got you covered. The -33's merino wool expedition weight garments will keep you warm on the coldest late season days while regulating and wicking away moisture in a way that only merino wool can do. You see, wool will absorb up to 30% of its weight in moisture without leaving you feeling wet or clammy, and wool insulates better than cotton or polyester and protects against hypothermia on those late season hunts. And here's another interesting point. You might not think of wool for early season, but with the minus 33 wicking technology, I'll take a lightweight minus 33 base layer any day in warm weather. Merino wool fibers naturally reject any bacteria found in moisture or sweat and gives you double protection against odor as your target buck approaches. Visit www.minus33.com to learn more about Minus 33's layering technology. Use the code BIGBUCK33 to get 10% off your next order.
Now here's Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Our first story this week, Colorado boy 8 injured in mountain lion attack describes encounter, quote, "I tried to get it in the eye," unquote. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Robert Gearty. The 8-year-old Colorado boy severely injured in a mountain lion attack said he tried to fight off the animal with a stick. Pike Carlson talked this week about his scary encounter with a mountain lion, which took place last month in his backyard in Bailey, according to reports. "I was just punching, trying to grab anything that I can, like a stick," Pike told KUSA-TV. "I did find a stick, and I tried to get it in the eye, but soon the stick snapped." Pike's father ran to his son and scared off the 65-pound mountain lion. "His head was inside the lion's mouth, and I watched, and I think that's what made me snap inside, just watching him chew on him," Ron Carlson told the station. Colorado Parks and Wildlife reported the attack the next day in a news release that did not identify Pike by name. According to the release, Pike and his older brother were playing on a trampoline when Pike heard a friend yell to him from a nearby house. The mountain lion pounced on him as he ran to the friend's house. Wildlife officers then shot and killed the mountain lion responsible for the attack. After the attack, doctors reattached Pike's left eye and closed wounds to his head with 60 staples, Fox 31 Denver reported on Friday. "Everything worked out the way it did, or else he wouldn't be here," Ron Carlson told Fox 31. "I want everyone to know if they want to wrestle a mountain lion, don't," he said, "because they cheat." Feral hogs headed for U.S. from Canada, wildlife officials warn of widespread damage. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Nicole Dara. An underreported threat along America's northern border has U.S. officials and local residents warning of widespread damage due to the reckless invaders, feral hogs from Canada. At least 8 pigs have been spotted in Canada just above the border with Lincoln County, Montana, according to officials. Wildlife Services and Montana Invasive Species Council, the National Feral Swine Program, the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department say the pigs could cause significant damage. Multiple people say that if we were to design an invasive species that would do the most widespread damage, feral swine aren't too far off from being the perfect specimen, Dale Nolte of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Feral Swine Program told the Daily Interlake. It would be a disaster. The pigs were described as rototillers. They root for food and wallow in farms, fields, and forests, leaving terrain unrecognizable. Tani Zamansky of the Montana Department of Livestock told the publication the feral hogs can decimate the rangeland by tearing up everything. The pigs might also spread diseases impacting wildlife and other animals. Michigan man went from perfectly healthy to brain dead in 9 days after contracting rare mosquito-borne disease, report says. This story is from the Fox News website as reported by Talia Kaplan. Greg McChesney, 64, died last month after a 9-day illness, according to his obituary. McChesney of Kalamazoo County reportedly died from Eastern equine encephalitis. The disease is sometimes called AAA or sleeping sickness. Late July, he was here at the farm helping me put docks in the pond, Wood TV reported McChesney's brother Mark as saying on Tuesday. He was perfectly healthy, a happy human being, and within a matter of 9 days, he went from perfectly healthy to brain dead. He told the station that his brother had a seizure, and the next thing you know, he's in the ER, and he just never came out of it. Several days after Greg McChesney had died, doctors reportedly confirmed that he had the mosquito-borne illness EEE. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services tweeted on Tuesday that 4 additional cases of EEE have been confirmed in southwest Michigan, including 2 that were fatal. The mosquito-borne disease remains a threat that has now resulted in 7 confirmed human cases of EEE in Michigan, with onset dates in July, the department said in a news release. EEE is one of the most dangerous mosquito-borne diseases in the country, with a 33% fatality rate in people who contract it. Symptoms include a sudden fever, chills, and body and joint aches, which can progress to severe inflammation of the brain, resulting in headaches, disorientation, tremors, seizures, and paralysis. In some cases, permanent brain damage, coma, and death are the tragic outcome, according to the MDHHS. 9 cases of triple E in horses had been confirmed as well, and all the animals have died. Rhode Island has reported 3 human cases with 1 death. Massachusetts has reported 8 human cases with 1 death. As I was putting the story together, the 8th case of triple E was reported in Michigan. McChesney is survived by his wife, son, and 2 grandchildren. This concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum for leads on the stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Cameran Derefield. Cameran Derefield, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Pretty good. Just out here enjoying all the scenery and the last minute velvet bucks.
Last minute velvet bucks. I kind of like that. It might be the title to the show here. It might be the show title that we end up using. Last minute velvet bucks. I like it. So where are you at?
Central probably south central Ohio.
Okay.
And
whereabouts?
Pretty much all farmland.
Whereabouts relative to like Columbus are you?
So I'm about 45 minutes southeast.
Okay. All right. That gives me a good barometer and geographic idea of where you're at. So we talked to a lot of guys from Ohio, and rightfully so, being who we are. You're living in one of the best big buck states in the country. So did Ohio find you, or did you find Ohio?
So it found me. I was born and raised here. It's been my home ever since I was born. I'm very thankful for that. I'm glad I didn't grow up in like Michigan or Pennsylvania or something.
Yeah, you never want to grow up in Michigan if you're from Ohio, right? And vice versa. It's like,
yeah,
especially with the Ohio State Michigan rivalry. That's just as bad news. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Especially for a guy like me. I don't watch sports, so to hear guys talk about that at work, I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, it means nothing to you, right? It's just, but
right,
it does mean a lot to a lot of people. But I think growing up in Ohio must be a treat, and I wonder, I've always wondered, like, is it sometimes overlooked? Do you take it for granted being in such a great buck state? What do you think?
I don't personally, because I hunt other states, so I know how good that we actually have it here.
Okay.
But I also know that our laws and all that stuff has helped our state actually produce bigger deer. There's a lot more people who actually bow hunt here. A lot more people who, we get 1 buck tag. So you see a lot more guys holding out for that one special buck. So which just only helps the herd and helps everything else. So
it is astonishing that you get 1 buck tag in Ohio because there's so many of them, right? But
yeah, it seems that way. It seems there is a lot.
Right. Compared to other states, I mean, I live in New Hampshire, man. This is what you have for a buck population versus doe population is astonishing to me. Like, that's just, but I'm envious as well. But I also respect and understand how you got there because the rules are different there, and you have an incredible amount of agriculture. Which
and and like I said, you just in the past 10 years, you've just seen a lot of guys, kind of become more into bigger deer. So that helps a ton, right. If say you over 5 square miles, 85% of those hunters hunting that 5 square miles are waiting for that one big buck, right. That pays off a lot because, it allows deer to grow. It allows our herd in general just to be, big and then, a lot of guys, they won't shoot does until they actually shoot a buck. So, that's kind of helped that whole side of it. But, I mean, I'm very thankful, to say the least, of where I live and where I've been able to hunt and the deer I've been able to chase. And it's It's only thing that would make it a deer hunter's true dream is if we did have 2 buck tags, but then again, it would probably ruin the state. So I'm glad that we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that helps, right? I mean, it's got to help you get to the bigger bucks that you get to by limiting the number of bucks that are taken, even though they're plentiful, right? So it will become and will stay that amazing buck state forever as long as those rules apply. And so you have great agriculture, and certainly antlers are a byproduct of great nutrition. And but it also takes some good genetics. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, me and my buddy was talking about this the other day, and I remember growing up. You would a big deer in the 90s, or all that was. You always hear people say, "Oh, well, so and so shot a really big 10-point, so and so shot a really big 8-point, or maybe a 12-point every once in a while." But now it's just the past 10, 15 years, people shooting 23 points and 40 points, and it's like, man, what is going on?
Yeah.
And it seems like it's changed so much. Now I don't know what to chalk that up to, whether it's just time or whatever it may be, people holding out for bigger deer, so on, whatever. But last year, I mean, I don't know if you pay attention, but our state was on fire last year with just record book deer, just big deer. And
well, to answer your question, yes,
it's truly amazing.
I pay attention a lot to that stuff. Just being in the position I'm in, I'm fascinated by all that stuff. It's just it captivates me endlessly to see all this stuff. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Yep. So you grew up in Ohio. It found you, but just because you're there, there are a lot of people in Ohio that don't hunt, even though it's part of the culture in a lot of ways. What drew you to the field? Some people just find it. Some people are taught it. How were you introduced to the outdoors?
So I was introduced by my dad and grandpa, and the number one thing if I had to think back and say what got me into chasing deer, I was probably 4 years old, and my dad shot probably 140-inch 8-point. And I remember being 4 years old, and I don't really remember him shooting the deer, but I remember the day that he brought it home, from it being mounted, and he brought it home, and he was so proud of it. He was looking at it, and just seeing the way that my dad looked at that deer, even at 4 years old, I was like, man, that's cool. And my dad and grandpa taught me how to hunt. Now, my dad and grandpa were deer hunters. They weren't big deer hunters, but they killed some really big deer, So they taught me the gist of it. That's where I fell in love with it. It was a big deal for us every single year. And as I got older, I started to transition from just being a deer hunter to chasing bigger deer and bigger deer and bigger deer. And, it was kind of hard for me being 18, 19 years old, because I kind of had to almost forget everything that my dad and grandpa taught me. They taught me how to kill deer. But, as we all know, killing big deer is a complete other ball game. And, so that's pretty much where I got my start and got my passion from and all that. And I just kind of took it, and put my own little twist on it and became who I am today.
Gotcha. So when would you say you started to transition from hunting deer to hunting big deer? Like when was that moment when the light switch was put on and you're like, okay, from now on, I'm letting them walk, and I'm only going to hunt and kill the bigger bucks?
Yeah. So I was 13 years old when I shot my first Pope and Young. Okay. And that was a big deal for me. It was, when that deer walked in, I thought it was, the biggest deer I ever seen. And that kind of flipped a switch in me, like, man, I want to kill big deer. And I didn't kill another big deer until I was 17. And I shot a 10-point with a 23.5-inch spread. And at that moment is when it kind of flipped the switch in me permanently. And that's when it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to chase big deer. And from that point on, I just became that. I just, I don't hunt big deer for anybody but myself. And it's because I love the challenge. I don't shoot 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. I wait till they're 5, 6. I pick one specific deer out every single year, and that's the only deer that I care about or hunt or anything. So I've kind of just I challenge myself in the aspect of that, you know, and you know, a 5-6 year old deer, you can't help it, but 9 times out of 10, they're just a big deer.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of when I basically I went from shooting just any buck or any deer I saw to hunting more mature deer. And that, you know, with that came bigger deer and, you know, so on. But yeah, that's about 17 is when it really started to really click for me.
Okay. So to pursue a big deer and to pursue just one in particular, does this occur year in, year out where you pick a particular deer and that's the only deer you hunt? Or do you have a hit list?
No, I pick out one deer and that's it.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, no other deer matters to me. You know, you'll hear me talk about it as a 100% chess match. And my grandpa taught me how to play chess when I was young, and I like how personal chess was, how challenging chess was.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, picking out one specific deer, picking him apart, finding out all of his flaws, everything about him, and actually being able to harvest him is the best, most exciting game of chess I've ever played.
I can see that. I mean, not that I have the caliber of deer in New Hampshire to pick compared to where you are, but every year I get stuck on one deer. And
yeah,
if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I mean, these hunts might last 3 years. Never mind, just, you know, that's good deer. I got to kill that year. It's, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. You know, and me, like, when I go into a season and I'm out and I finally decide to kill a deer, failure to me is not really an option. I do everything, you know. Last year, the deer I killed, I chased for 60 days straight, hunted 230 hours. I carried stand and sticks camera every time that I went in. I never hunted the same tree twice. It was real safe. I knew where he was the whole time, but I couldn't get to him. So I played it real safe, always playing the wind. You know, thermals. I pay attention to everything. And finally on the 60th day, I got him. You know, in that process, I passed some great deer. I passed a mid 160s deer, a mid 170s deer, multiple 130s, a couple 140s, just because I wanted to kill that one specific deer.
Okay. How do you pick them out? How do you decide that that's the deer I'm going after?
99% of the time, it's a deer that I have that is walking my farm that I have the most history with, and he has to be 5 years old or older.
Okay.
So, the last 2 deer I've killed, I had 3 years of history with them apiece. I wasn't hunting them the whole time because they weren't old enough, but I had 3 years of history with each one of those deer.
Gotcha. Okay. And the history, tell me more about the history. Like, how do you develop a history with a particular deer over the course of 5 years?
You know, I run a lot of trail cameras. I spend a lot of time laying in fields and videoing deer. Deer hunting is everything to me. It's what I do. And over time, when you spend as much time doing that, and you're on the same farms, watching the same deer, you get to learn these deer's personalities, what they like, what they don't like. You get to see them. It's almost like watching somebody from afar, and you get to see them kind of grow up a little bit. You see their patterns change. You see them get smarter. You see, you know, all these different things happen, and you kind of just get to completely analyze this with trail cam pictures, with sightings, with you know, all this stuff just adds up. And that's, you know, history to me is what is, you know, when you shoot a deer and you can be like, oh, I remember it was two falls ago in October, he come working down this flat, and he used to love that flat, but as he got older, he kind of changed up. He didn't, you know, like, that's what history is to me. And being able to really, you know, get personable with these deer, basically, and being able to hunt them without hunting them is the best thing I can say, because you watch them grow up. You're hunting them, but you're not hunting to actually kill them.
You're studying them.
And like, you know, I pick out one deer a year, but at the same token, I pick out my deer for next year also. So
okay,
I follow 2 deer a season, but I'm only going to shoot one of them.
Gotcha. All right. So so you must have a decent amount to pick from when they're young, and from what you're describing. But when they get to 4 years old, that's when you're starting to say, okay, that's going to be next year's deer, and this year's deer is the one you picked last year.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you really have
well, for instance, the deer I'm chasing this year, he's 6.5. But last year, I was busy chasing a different deer that meant a lot more to me. So he kind of got the pass last year, and so now he's 6.5, and now I'm hunting him, and that's the deer that I actually.
Gotcha. All right. So you've created a knowledge of the deer that you're going to hunt from. Basically, you're watching two deer at the same time, but one is next year's, one's this year. And the deer you're hunting this year is a 6.5 instead of a 5.5-year-old, because he might be the best in the crop this year.
Yeah, maybe not the best inches wise, but he is, top. He's top of the list because I have the most history with him. He's something that the only reason he got the pass last year is because I was chasing a different deer, and I had so many opportunities to actually kill this deer and I didn't. So there's a lot of things feeding into it.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so you've figured out that this is the deer that you're going to hunt this year.
Yep.
So tell me about the development of, like, a little bit more detail, why this is the deer this year. Tell me about so you knew this deer 2 years ago. You knew this deer last year. What was it that made him the number one deer that you're going to hunt?
Well, he is the oldest deer. He has given me the most history on this farm. He is basically, so I have 9 deer mounted, and I've never killed a big 8-point. So this deer was a 10-point last year, so I kind of expect him to be a 10 this year. Well, come to find out, he turned into a giant 8-point. So it's kind of it's even more, So it just drives me to shoot him more, and he's not going to get any better. He's 6.5 years old. He he might have been in his prime last year, but he just has my attention. I like his personality. I like how in the past year he's completely changed a lot in the sense of it's almost like he got smarter, and and that's what I tend to see from year to year. You see a lot of deer just completely change up, like they become way more wise, and so he's really got me. He's got me hooked. It's the most challenging deer to hunt on this farm, and that's what I like.
Gotcha. Give me an example of how this particular deer got wiser. Like, what have you noticed? Like, hey, this he's getting older and smarter, and now he's definitely got he's no longer the pawn. Now he's the king. How do you know that? Like, what is it that's indicating that this deer is smarter than he was and the smartest deer on the farm?
His pattern, and the things that he does. He even last summer he was very just didn't have a care in the world. Shoved everywhere. I got a mile-long driveway, and he'd just be standing there right next to the driveway. He would run once I got close to him, but he just was much more visible. He was on cameras that were just in the most random places. But this year he's kind of staying off into the shadows. He wasn't easy to find, and there's times that he's disappeared for a couple weeks, and I've had to shift cameras around to find him. He's became unpredictable, which to me that's when they become very exciting, and I like hunting deer like that.
Interesting. All right, so it's the unpredictability of the animal that intrigues you.
Yes, sir.
It's when they get off their pattern. Do you think that's the indicator of an older deer or a smart deer, or both?
I think both. I think it just comes with time. Now there are some deer that you see it at 3 years old that are smart. Just smart deer. A vast amount of these deer, as they get older, they tend to get smarter. They learn stuff, whether they've seen other deer get shot, they've been hunted by other people, they've been shot at. They know where people are going to be, where they're not going to be. It just be, over time, they just get to experience everything, and it just makes them smarter,
Gotcha.
Wiser.
All right. So now you've picked your deer. You've recognized him as the smartest, most intriguing, most elusive animal on the farm. How do you decide to hunt them? What's the next plan? What's the next step?
The next thing I do is like I said, I put out a lot of cameras. Just on this deer alone, I'm running 23 cameras, I think.
Okay, are you a camera guy?
Yeah, and cameras do a lot of work for me because I do live in farm country. So 80% of my properties are open ag fields.
Okay.
So, I have to be real cautious in everything I do. But I use cameras a lot. I go out and film a lot. Sit in the evenings, watch. I also know that I've hunted this particular farm for going on 6 years now. I know how the deer are going to use it. I especially know how the big deer are going to use it. And it's something that and that's why I pick the most the deer that is the hardest to kill, because I like challenging myself. And when I'm hunting the same farm over and over again, it gets I don't mean to say this in a bad way, but it gets boring to me to go hunt the same old spots and shoot a 140-inch deer over and over and over again. I want the challenge. That's what drives me 100% is the challenge. Yeah. There's already a stigma about hunting private land in this state because everybody who doesn't live here thinks it's easy to go out and shoot a 170-inch deer, and it's not that easy. These deer are smart. It's not as easy as what it's definitely easier than some other parts of the country, but in the same token, it's not easy.
Right.
So, it's just so once I figure out the area that he's using the most, when he's using it, I really start to break it down on why he's using it or how he's using it, and I go from there and I start saying, oh, well, he's probably going to come in here on this wind. I go back to trail cam pictures, figure out when I'm getting pictures of him. I look at the wind during all them trail cam pictures.
Okay.
Weather, I don't really play a lot into the moon phase, but it's just because I never took the time to really learn it and really, test it out. I've just always gone off weather, the way that he uses a certain tract of land or a certain section of timber and why he's using it. So I basically break all that down. I keep a journal. Every year I start fresh with a brand new journal of that specific deer. And I go back to my old journals because I'll mark, stuff that he did or, at that, the previous year, the year before that, because I pick out deer that he could be good in 2 years. He could be good next year, and I base it all off of this. And when it all comes together and, you're sitting there in your stand and it's opening day and you're waiting for the sun to come up, one can't help but to second guess his every move. You're like, well, is this the right spot? Am I doing the right thing? But you learn, throughout the course of the season what to do, what not to do. And that's basically I let them kill themselves in a sense of I let them do what they need to do, and their faults, their habits, everything like that is what kills these deer.
So are you looking for patterns using the maybe a sighting or more or less are you letting the cameras and then taking the dates on those cameras and the time frame and going back and referencing the weather relative to that exact moment? Are you getting that specific and trying to identify patterns?
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be like that. Like that doesn't mean that if he's using this wood patch on a west wind, 2 days a week, that doesn't mean he's going to be in there every time there's a west wind. So there's going to be holes in every game. But what you can do is you can narrow it down. Okay, well, if he's coming through here on a west wind on so and so days, and on this west wind he hasn't came through here, where could he be bedding? Where else could he be going from that bedding? What's enticing him there? You basically just pick apart everything. And I do that with cameras. I do that with sightings. I do that with every piece of knowledge that I can gather on this deer. Previous years, what he used to do, where I know he used to bed, so on and so on. And it's not it. Once you do this, you start seeing somewhat, even if they do kind of change up their pattern each year, they have some favorite spots, and they know some spots where they're safe, and it all just kind of comes comes into one when you go into season and you're like, okay, I know he's betting here on this win, so I'm gonna hunt over here today, you know. But
Okay.
it's just like playing chess. You can move either way you want to, but just one move can cost you the whole game.
And this is all predicated off of lots of camera information. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. You know, and then also, you know, just some knowledge of knowing how big deer use areas. What to expect from bigger deer. What to expect from big deer on this farm. You know, just you know, I let all that kind of play into it.
Okay. Let's talk about your journal entry a little bit. That's intriguing to me. And I hear some guys keep journals, some don't. Some keep kind of mental notes, but you're actually writing this down. What's a journal entry look like to you? Like, how detailed are you getting, and what are you basing it off of? Is it just ideas that you had, or was it, you know, actually taking notes on the camera stamp for that day and that time?
Yeah, so pretty much everything you mentioned. I write down the weather. I write down the wind direction. I write down what he was doing, where I saw him walk out of, where he walked into. If it's a trail cam picture, you know, the time, you know, date. Anything that I can write down that I can possibly use gets wrote down. Now, I don't sit there and write out a full story. It's almost like little pinpoints. But you know, I can go back. And, you know, and sometimes that's helped me find deer that have kind of disappeared for a couple weeks. I'll go back and figure out what he was doing the year prior on these dates, and I'll adjust my cameras, and boom, there he is. So it's a lot of extra work. Sometimes it can be a headache, especially with life. You know, I'm a husband, a father. I got, you know, a job. I own my own guide service, all this other stuff. So it's hard to keep it all together, but it's, you know, it's worth it. You know, it's worth it to me anyways, to be able to, you know, go back, look, or even just have the knowledge. And at the same time, I'm learning about deer. So, you know, that's something that's really cool to me.
Right. No, it's a great lesson. It's very entertaining. It's one of the most entertaining things on the planet to me and to you and lots of other guys and gals that listen to this show. The journal entries aren't necessarily like, you're not like writing prose. You're just kind of putting down some points. Are you organizing the information by the deer? Like you have a book for this deer and a book for that deer, or is it just random entries and then you kind of go through and make notes of that this particular deer was here, and then you look for, I don't know, you highlight that one section that is for that deer. You're looking for the name of that deer or whatever it is.
Well, what I'll do is if I start seeing a pattern, like once a month he's here, and it's within the same 4 or 5 day period, or if he tends to stay on this side of the farm, I'll go to this side of the farm on another time of year. If I start seeing these patterns, I'll start to combine those, and you know, I'll basically highlight them, and you know, those are the points that I really pay attention to, because that's what's going to kill him.
Okay.
You know, pattern, you know, and knowing that, and, you know, and like I said, sometimes they switch a pattern up, but every time there's at least an area or a couple areas that is common ground that is used by him year after year after year.
Okay. Gotcha. So you ever get stumped? You ever like, man, I can't figure this one. I can't crack this code. This guy's a better chess player than I am.
Oh, 100%. Last year, the deer I was chasing, he done that to me quite a few. And it's very easy to get frustrated and give up, or, you know, shoot something else because it's easy, or, you know, but you got to stay focused. You got to. You got to push yourself through those times, because almost every single time that's happened to me, I sit down and I read these journals and I go through stuff. I look at trail cam pictures, and it's like a light bulb goes off, and it's like I know where he's at, you know. And I would say I'm not right every time, but it's helped me out a bunch of times.
Okay. All right, gotcha. Are you using maps at all, or are you just so intimate with the farms that you hunt that you don't need them?
Yeah, I don't really use maps. I just know the land that I hunt. I pay attention to every little thing.
Okay.
You know, I just know it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, if you're familiar with a certain tract of land, you can retrace your steps, no problem. It's once you get familiar, you don't need that map anymore. It's already in your head. Do you find yourself when you're first, I mean, you've got, it sounds like you got a few farms to hunt. How many acres are we talking about that you got to pick from that you then narrow down on each of those farms, if there are multiple farms or on the farm, that you narrow it down to that's the deer I got to hunt? Like how many acres are you starting with?
I have 3,600 acres.
Okay.
And it's over 4 farms and 2 different counties.
Okay. And are these farms that you've worked with landowners to hunt on, or are they pieces of land that you own, or how does that work out for you?
I don't own any land. I lease a couple, and then a couple I have that I just got by word of mouth. And then the one piece I have is a farm that I've hunted since I was a kid, and I've always put so much work into it and been so good to the landowner that he won't let anybody else hunt it but me. And actually, out of all that land, my last 3 deer I've killed and the deer I'm chasing, I've killed off the same probably 110 acre circle.
Gotcha. All right. So out of the 3,600, you're mostly focused on 110 acres.
Yeah, that's where my last 3 deer have been, and that's where the one I'm chasing now is.
Okay. So there's something about that 110 acres that's producing good deer. Something about the habitat. There must be something that big deer like there. Do you think that'll continue based off of what you know of history with the rest of the 3,600, or is it something that you think it is a special place, or do you think it's just happens to be the right place at the right time for the last 3 years and it may change?
Well, when I first started hunting this farm, it was a good farm. It wasn't a spectacular farm, but it was a good farm. You had probably 2 shooters on it every season, the first 2 seasons, and I really started putting work in on this farm, and got a lot of the neighbors on the same page as me, and really just started managing. And in about a 3-year time span, I went from having 2 shooters a year, not even at the same time, just 2 shooters period throughout the whole year, to last summer I had 7 shooters, and what I consider a shooter is a 5-year-old deer.
Okay.
So it really it's changed since I started hunting it for the better, and I've just really out of all my farms, I've kind of hyper focused on this farm for some reason. It just draws me, and I just like it, and it just I know it. I'm good on it. I have 2 farms that I haven't even touched in 2 years, but I'm the only one who can actually hunt them. I just haven't spent the time on them because I've been busy with this farm because it's just something about it. I just love it.
Okay. Gotcha. So let's talk about some of your other tactics and strategies. Do you use bait to draw them in, or are you a free range, don't bait them in kind of guy?
So I bait deer, but I do not hunt bait. I bait deer because everybody within 200 miles of here baits deer. All my neighbors, everybody. So if I don't bait deer even a little bit, I'm not going to have the deer that everybody else is.
Okay.
So I do bait deer. I've never still to this day have killed a mature buck off a corn pile. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's not a real productive way.
Right.
Because these deer are used to that. These deer, I promise you, when these deer walk into a corn pile, if they even walk into a corn pile in daylight, they're looking up. They're expecting danger to be there.
Right. So,
because that's how they've been shot at. The last 3 deer I've shot have all been shot before I shot them.
Really?
So,
okay. All right.
These deer know, they associate that corn with danger.
Yeah. Right.
And
that's right. And I think, you hit the nail on the head, is that when you interact with deer, no matter how it is, if there isn't a positive outcome to whatever they experienced, it's a negative outcome for the most part, or a neutral outcome. And if it's negative, they're on high alert. So the chances of killing them under that negative experience again is pretty slim. So you got to figure out another way.
Yep. That's so. The baiting, and that's another stigma that we get up here. Is you guys get the bait deer. It's easy to kill deer. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That doesn't play a role. Only thing that does is get you good photos at nighttime.
Yeah, that is the truth. That is the truth. So you've identified, let's say, and we'll get into a good story here in a little bit, maybe last year's deer, if that's the most memorable. But you've identified an area. You've patterned the deer. You've got your journal entry. You've got your cameras and data from the cameras that have indicated that this deer is on the 110 acres that you're going after. How do you start to narrow in on the 110 acres?
Well, see, the 110 acres is on a 1,900 acre farm. Mm-hmm. So what's nice about it is if he does kind of disappear for a week or two, I kind of have a little bit of movement. I can go and find him. So, but again, this 110 acre circle is where I've laid down the last 3, and if I get a shot at this deer, will be the place I kill him, just because the way it's laid out, the reason that they are here. And, so basically I know the bedding here. I know the thermals on this farm. I'm real big on thermals. I kind of know everything there is to know about this farm. I've completely became a student of this property.
Yep.
And
tell me more about the thermals. Like how do you read thermals? How do you know how the thermals are moving on this particular farm, and when to go in and when to stay out?
Well, so when I first started reading about thermals, it completely, sent me for a loop, and I had no idea what anybody was talking about. But I basically went out and, sat in stands, sat on knobs, walked in places on different wind directions, and used the old, hunting beast tactic with milkweed and all this other stuff, and finding out that, the wind can be blown one way, but it's carrying a complete other way.
Right.
And once I started to realize that, because I always hunted the wind up to that point. Well, the wind's blowing in my face. I don't know why this deer's blowing at me. And then once I started to really learn all this stuff and, understand thermals and how they work, and, how they work in the morning, how they work in the evening, how they work around water, all this other stuff. It really changed me as a hunter, and that's when I started to become a successful hunter year after year.
Okay.
If somebody asks me what's the number one thing that I need to learn when it comes to killing big deer, I say thermals.
Okay. All right. When you talk about thermals and you've learned thermals, can you summarize, or in a generality, how thermals move in the morning, how they move in the evening, how they move around water?
Yeah. So in the morning, obviously, when the sun's coming up, your thermals are going up. Now that can mean a lot of things. If you're hunting on the side of a ridge, which here there's not ridges. It's pretty flat.
Yep.
But so say the wind's coming over top of the hill and you're sitting down on this ridge. Well, what thermals are actually doing is working as like a vacuum and sucking your scent right back up that hill. If you got water and say it's hot all day and it's sunny, if you hunt next to water, even in the evening, because that water is a different temperature, the thermals are going to be going up on that water if it's a standing body of water. So you can hunt the edge of that and let the wind blow across that, and it's going to actually raise the thermals up. And then in the evening, of course, your thermals are coming down, and you really have to pay attention to this and figure out. The number one thing is figure out the lay of your land. Figure out 100% how your land lays, how the deer are using them, and why they are using them. Because deer, the reason I say thermals are important, because deer use thermals like no business. That's how they survive.
Gotcha.
They don't know what they're doing, but they know that they can smell this, and they can smell that, and they're bedding here for when you see a big buck bedding somewhere, there's science behind why he's bedding.
Right.
He just doesn't bed somewhere for no reason.
Yeah. Whitetail's not going to walk into a lecture room and give you a synopsis on how thermals work, but they know how it works because of their nose and what they've experienced. Right.
Yep.
Which is probably the best lesson of all. Really, experience. Gotcha. So you've journal entries, cameras, you got the 110 acres, this is the buck you're going after. When do you decide today's the day? And then once you decide today's the day, what's your setup?
So, that depends on what area that I want to go in, and if he's using that area. So, so all that plays into that, which comes from your data. So when I go into an area, it has to be perfect. Wind has to be perfect. Weather has to be perfect. And I do 95% of my hunts are actually hanging hunts. I carry lock-on, climbing sticks, filming gear, everything, and I go right in, set up. When I'm done that evening, I tear it all back down and walk out. I mostly hunt evenings. I'm not much of a morning guy.
Okay.
Now I'll hunt mornings come November because you just have to be out.
Right. Right. What's your reasoning behind that?
I just noticed in farmland that evenings are way more deadly, and in the mornings you tend to mess stuff up. These deer are out in these fields all night, and right before daylight they're walking back. And you got to walk through 2 or 3 fields to get to your stand, and the chances of you boogering it up are pretty good.
Yeah.
Because these deer can see you for hundreds of yards, so it's not like walking through the timber. We've all seen a flashlight in the timber. Sometimes it can be hard to see even if they're 200 yards away with good leaves on and everything. In farmland, you're seeing me from almost a mile.
Yeah.
It's just different in farmland. Now, hardwoods is different. I would hunt that different. And I do hunt that differently whenever I'm out of state or, but, farmland is just for me, the way I hunt, evenings are the very, very best.
Okay. And it kind of makes sense. Because deer are nocturnal animals in a lot of ways. And daylight movement is not their strong point. And if you're walking in for a morning hunt, you're walking through at a time deer are on the move, typically. And you're undoubtedly going to bump 1 or 2 on your way to your place, right? But contrast to that, if you go in the evening, you're going in early enough where they're probably not on the move yet, but they will be by the time you get to your spot ahead of time. And the movement will occur while you're already in place.
Yep.
To me, that makes sense. Unless, of course, you're heavy rut, and then, all bets are off.
Right. Yeah, rut. Rut's that special time of year when you don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen.
Right.
Right. But I usually like to have my deer dead before then. I'm not a, and you might take this the wrong way, but I'm not a big fan of rut because of my style of hunting. When I'm hunting one specific deer, rut is nightmare.
I'm finding more and more as I do lots of these interviews that the more serious hunters that kill the bigger deer, generally speaking, are those guys that really don't like the rut because it's less predictable. Yeah,
and that's and like I like hunting deer that aren't that predictable, but you add rut into the mix, and it's not good when you're chasing that one specific deer. If you're out there just to kill a good deer, and who knows, you might kill the biggest deer your entire life.
Right.
Go out there and enjoy it. But when rut comes around, I get stressed if I don't have my target down.
You become a bear.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Gotcha. So you're a ladder guy or a stick guy. You like to get up, get in, get out. You don't leave stuff there. It's not like you're putting in a fixed stand. That's kind of where it's going to be. And I'm going to go to that stand all the time when the wind's right. No, you're a moving guy. You'd like to move around from spot to spot based off of what you've decided is the right time for that spot at that very moment, because the deer may have a different plan each time.
Yeah.
It makes a lot
and there's nothing wrong with hanging stands and hunting stands. I got buddies who kill big deer out of the same stand every single year.
Right.
But they don't target specific deer,
Right.
They got 4 or 5 good deer that they're chasing. And like I've said before, the reason I pick one specific deer is if I go into a season and I've got 3 or 4 shooters that I'm okay with shooting, I'm kind of lazy. I don't put as much effort into it because I think, even if I booger him up, I still got him. Or chasing that one deer keeps me on my toes, keeps me focused.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. If you're at the level that you're at, finding that one deer makes it all worthwhile. The hunt itself is tremendous. The kill is just icing, but the hunt keeps you going back because it doesn't. It's the moments that it doesn't happen and makes you want to go again. That makes
I talk about I say there's a lot of romance when it comes to chasing a specific deer.
Right.
It's like when you're a 17-year-old boy and you and you meet a girl and you talk for 2 or 3 weeks and all that excitement, all that feeling. It's kind of like that whenever you're chasing that one deer and the ups and downs of the whole season and all the work you put in. You know, it's just like, it's kind of like that feeling. It's just the chase. Once you fall in love with the process and the chase, then you're hooked.
Right.
You know.
Right. That's a heck of an analogy. I've not heard it described like that, but I see the similarities. That's interesting. So you what are you using for gear other than your sticks and your lock on or hang on or whatever you're using? What other gear are you bringing into the woods typically to hunt?
So every time I go in, I have ozonics with me, my camera arm, lock on sticks. I don't use scent. I mean, I use like spray scent just a little bit on just like my boots.
Like cover scent or neutralizer?
Yeah, cover. I use so like scent, just stuff to take my scent away. I don't use any doe urine, no rut and buck, no, none of that. I don't use any of that. I feel like that kind of hinders you a little bit when you're chasing one specific deer.
Okay.
Because usually I'm chasing, the whole kingpin of this area, and he knows everything and every deer around here. So I feel like if I come in with something foreign, that's going to spook him.
Yeah.
So I don't use any kind of I don't make any mock scrapes, or I have before, and I just haven't got good results from them or results that I would like from them. Do I have deer at them? Yes. Do they get hit? Yes. But does the deer I want to kill hit them? Very rarely. So, I try to keep myself as natural as possible. I run a real tight scent process with my clothes, with me. Whenever I check cameras, I try to wear a long sleeve shirt, the same boots every single time that I go in, and those boots don't do anything else. They're just for checking cameras. I'm very strategic in every step of the process. But going into the field, I carry a book bag with like extra SD cards, batteries in case I come to a camera and the batteries are dead, or I can swap the card out. But that's about it. I don't call a deer. I don't grunt at deer. I don't rattle deer. I never in my life have done the and stopped the deer.
Okay.
I've never done any of that. I just not saying none of it. Not saying none of it works. If it works for you, do it. But for me and the way I like to hunt, I just don't do it.
Not like they do on television. That's what you're saying.
No, it's not like
not an as seen on TV situation.
No. To me, it's just when you kill a deer in their natural habitat, doing what they naturally do. That's what it is to me. Not when you yell at them with your fake grunt and they stop and they're scared.
Yeah. So you kind of, you're a minimalist. You kind of leave everything behind.
Yeah, I do carry ozonics, like I said, so I do kind of carry some new age stuff, but I don't carry scents. I don't call a deer. I don't have my moon guide in my book bag, nothing crazy like that. Right. I hunt off knowledge.
Cameras, ozonics, mobility, and studying through journal logs. It sounds like that's you in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's it's the most, that's back to that romance word. That's the most intimate way, I guess, you could actually hunt a deer. Sure, people would knock me for carrying ozonics and all that other stuff, but I like ozonics. Now I do think this. I think there will be a day when ozonics doesn't work, and my theory behind that is, if we can smell the ozone, the deer can smell the ozone. Mm-hmm. So eventually they're going to associate that with danger by seeing other deer get shot, or seeing a human with that smell, and kind of correlate that. And I think if you use it too much on one farm and booger up enough deer, I think it could work against you.
Right. I think you're right. I think it's that it's an identifier. It's a smell. Definitely has a smell. And if you have enough negative interactions with enough deer, they will start to not only learn it, but then teach it. Where, hey, this is you need to be on high alert because I've been shot at 5 times now. Every time I smell this ozonics, every time I smell ozone, something bad happens. Or too many times out of 5 times out of 10, every time I smell ozone, something not so good is trying to challenge my survival.
Right. I've brought that up to multiple people, and I actually used to be sponsored by Ozonics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not now, but I brought that up to people, and people were just like, "Oh, you're crazy! It's ozone, it'll." And I'm like, one of these days, I really feel like it could backfire.
Right.
Gotcha.
So let's go on. What are you shooting for a bow? I didn't even ask you about your bow. You're a bow hunter, I assume, based off of what you're talking about. More than a gun hunter. Are you a crossbow hunter as well, or just straight up?
Nope.
Okay.
Just I shoot a compound. I shoot a Expedition 7 HD.
Yep.
Great bow. I shot Elite for the past three or 4 years, and I love them. But the speed just isn't there. All that. So I switched to the bow I have now this summer, and just fell in love with it.
Gotcha. All right. Let's go on a memorable deer hunt with you, if we could. Just kind of break it down, play by play, step by step, and kind of bring in all these things we've been talking about into this hunt, how it all kind of came together.
Favorite hunting memory.
Or just one that you remember that is a little special to you.
So I will say this: the first bigger buck, my first Pope and Young buck was with a crossbow, so it didn't get to be in the Pope and Young, but it scored to that,
Okay. Where are we going? Back to your farm?
I was 13.
13. Okay.
And we was on this farm that we hunted my entire childhood, and I was hunting with my dad and my grandpa, and we got to where the trail split, and you could either go up the hill or around the hill. And my dad pointed up the top of the hill, and I'm 13 years old, maybe weighing 130 pounds. I got 25-pound climber on my back. I got a crossbow. I shot compound at the time, but I had a PSE, and my buddy dry fired it and cracked the limbs. So I had to send it back to have it fixed that summer, and it wasn't fixed in time, so I was crossbow hunting. And so I had all this stuff on me, and my dad points to the top of the hill, and he says, "Go up there and just pick you out a tree." And I'm like, and it's dark, and I'm like, well, I ain't gonna see no deer today. And I walk up the hill, I find this good flat, and it opens into a hayfield. Well, I get right on the edge of it, and I didn't adjust my climber right, so I get about 15 feet up, and my climber's kind of facing down, and so here I am. 13 years old up in this tree. Climber's all out of sorts. I finally, I get settled, and it's about daybreak. And it was real windy. It was October 15th, I do believe. And super windy morning. And I'm just sitting there. And about 8:30, I look over in that hayfield, and there's a 10-point staring at me. So I must have stuck out like a sore thumb.
Right.
But he's looking at me. So I raised that crossbow up, and the whole time he's just looking at me. And I get him in the scope, and like any young man would, the first thing I look at is his daggone rack,
Yep.
And I'm just looking at him, and I think to myself, well, you better shoot him. And so I shoot him, and I hit him a little bit high, and he kind of fell down, and he tried to get back up. Was trying to get back up. Well, I shot him again. And we had walkie-talkies at the time. Yep. And I called my dad, and I didn't know he didn't have it on vibrate. So, it's just do-do-do-do-do, So he gets on the walkie-talkie mad because he thought I accidentally hit the button or something.
Yep.
I said, "Dad, I just shot a really big buck." And he's like, and he answered me back. He's like, "Yeah, I bet." And I was like, "Dad, I'm telling you, I just shot a big buck." I was like, "I need you up here." And so I sat there in the tree just enjoying it because the deer was laying there dead, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm shaking. Like I couldn't have even got down if I wanted to. I was shaking so bad.
Right.
And I see my dad kind of top the hill, and he can't see the deer because it's in this little hayfield. And he was like, "Well, where's it at?" And he threw his hands up, and I'm like, "It's in the field." And he was like, "Mm-hmm." And he just walked across the field and literally almost stepped on that deer. And he looked up at me and said, "You got to be kidding me." And he didn't see a deer all morning, you know, and neither did my grandpa, but you know, I shot that deer, and that was my first, you know, bigger deer. He scored 135 inches, and just a great deer, man. And you know, for a 10-year-old, he had a real chocolate rack, you know. It's just, and just a real pretty deer. And from, you know, my dad, I finally got down. My dad hugged me, you know, and I was crying. I'll never forget that moment. No matter how many deer I killed, that first good buck was I mean, it was a life-changing moment for me. You know?
That is awesome. That's a great story. I mean, going back to, you know, early on, that's it's a memorable one for sure. That'll last a lifetime, no question about it. Well, let me ask.
And that's one thing I love about deer hunting. You got one deer that's on, you know, that you got deer mounted, and you can look at pictures, and you can look at that deer, look at that picture, and it takes you right back into that moment in time.
Right,
you know?
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing to actually have, you know.
That is one of the reasons I do love taxidermy. You know, it's it just brings back that moment, and you almost go into this phase of almost like a trance, and you relive that moment as though you were there at that very time over again.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, just looking at the deer does that to you, and you can have, you know, 200 on the wall, and you could probably remember each and every one, because each rack would be different and unique, like a fingerprint.
That's exactly what it is, you know. And I've sat in my deer room and looked at every deer and just kind of fast forwarded through them and pictured every single shot on every single deer. You know?
Yep, exactly.
And that's just it's just nice to have something to actually hold on to, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. There's no question about it. Amen for taxidermy. Let me run through 10 rapid fire questions with you just to get to know your personality a little bit better.
Okay.
All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
If I had to give a hunting tip, stay at it. Be very persistent.
That's excellent advice. We all have these things that kind of drives us crazy if we don't have it with us in the stand, and bothers us the whole hunt. What's that one thing for you?
My camera, because I didn't get to film a lot growing up, and I've seen a lot of cool things. So definitely my camera.
Camera, very nice. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Hearing people chew whenever they eat.
You and my wife would get along great. She really can't stand that either. That is funny. There's a thing that's actually called something too. I forgot what it is, but yeah, that's like a real condition. It's a psychological thing. How old are you today?
I'll be 28 this month.
28. What would you tell the 16-year-old Cameran Derefield, knowing what you know today?
Slow down, pay attention to everything around you, and just know that if you try hard, I know you'll get frustrated. I know it'll be rough, but just try hard, and it'll all work out.
Nice. All right, you're at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and you talk to a stranger in the hotel lobby. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I'm a union tradesman, and I'm a outfitter and guide.
Gotcha. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Granola bar.
All right, excellent. You get your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Life's a garden, dig it, from Joe Dirt.
I like that. Very nice. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Successful. First person that pops in my head. I would have to say my grandpa, because he raised some good men.
Very cool. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Wake up, don't want to go to work, but I go to work and think about deer all day. Spend my lunch watching YouTube videos of deer, and come home, shoot my bow, watch velvet deer, and if it's season, I'm hunting.
Nice. And then what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Stressful. No, just, I really enjoy no matter if it's snowing, raining, whatever. I just really enjoy just being out there and enjoying the sights.
Nice. Very, very good. All right, that's the 10 rapid-fire questions. Appreciate you going through that exercise. And Cameron, if we have created more questions than we've provided answers in our conversation, which we often do on this show, where can people find more about you, your outfitting service, your social media stuff? Where can they find you?
Okay, Cameran Wicked Obsession is my Instagram name.
Okay.
It's from there you can pretty much see that I run a hunting team, I run a guide service, all those pages are there. We basically as a team, it's me and 3 other guys. We all share the same passion. We don't really give a whole lot of the hoopla or let sponsors run anything. We just kind of hunt, and all 4 of us have a different style of hunting. We just like to show the process 365 days a year from 4 different standpoints, because there is more than one way to actually kill deer. So, but yeah, Instagram, Facebook, I'm on social media a lot, so
nice.
That's probably the best place to find me.
Okay. Cameran Derefield on Instagram. If we type in your name, we find it.
Yep, it has my full name on there. So if you just type in my name, you'll find me. And
okay.
then,
all right.
and I want to tell everybody, feel free to message me. Share deer stories with me. I love hearing them. I love people chasing big deer and strategizing. I always got group messages going on of strategizing for deer and how to kill deer.
Yep, gotcha. And so just so everybody who's listening knows, and the spelling of your name, it's Cameran with an A-N for Cameran, and Deerfield is D-E-R-E Field instead of D-E-R Field. So just in case you need to have that. If we'd love to have you back on the show again sometime, Cameran. I think you are a wealth of knowledge, and you have a lot to share. And I think your strategies and techniques and styles are a high quality, and that people could really learn more from you for listening to you, watching you on social media. So we may have to do this again down the road. But this time, man, it's been an honor and a pleasure, and really enjoyed our talk. I learned a lot, and I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really enjoy your podcast and everything that you do. So just keep it up, and I wish you all the best of luck in this season coming up.
Thanks to Cameran for joining us on the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. I really like how Cameran describes the hunt as a chess match, and how he picks out 2 bucks a year and then zones in on one he's going to kill this year and then picks out next year's buck. So it becomes a complete game of chess between the pawn and the king. And who becomes the king at the end of the season? Well, that depends on how the deer season goes. But I like his enthusiasm. I like his persistence. I like the way he uses a journal and the cameras and then tries to put together the pieces of the puzzle. And like he said, not always right, but a lot of times he is, just because he patterns deer, specifically the one he's after, year over year over year, and learns more about that buck. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you? Or you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, "Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry." And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registries Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.